Let me tell you about the day our entire galactic society realized we'd made a terrible, terrible mistake. Oh, don't give me that look with your secondary optical organs. You know exactly which day I mean. The day we challenged a human to a duel. I, Captain Xandor Vex of the Centaurian Defense Fleet, had the misfortune of witnessing everything firsthand from my position in the Galactic Council chamber. And before you ask, yes, I'm the same Xandor Vex who now teaches human psychology and combat avoidance 101 at the military academy. Funny how life works out, right? The council chamber aboard Space Station Nexus 7 was its usual pompous self that day, all gleaming crystal spires and floating holo displays. We representatives of the 17 galactic species sat in our designated pods, arranged in concentric circles that rose toward the ceiling like some architect's fever dream. The air practically crackled with the usual mix of political tension and overinflated egos. Another routine day of bureaucratic nonsense, I remember thinking, absently adjusting my ceremonial collar. Hey, if only. Everything changed the moment she walked in. Alexandra Reeves, though we'd soon learn why she earned the nickname the Storm, the human representative, didn't so much enter the chamber as she commanded it, striding through those towering doors like she owned the place. And trust me, as someone with enhanced visual receptors, I noticed everything. She wore what I'd later learn was called a power suit black, as deep space with red accents that matched her lips. Her dark skin seemed to glow under the chamber's crystalline lights, and her hair was pulled back in what humans call cornrows, intricate patterns that spoke of both discipline and artistry. But it was her eyes that caught everyone's attention. They held that uniquely human mix of warmth and steel, like twin supernovas waiting to explode. Distinguished representative, she announced, her voice carrying that strange human quality of being both respectful and slightly mocking at the same time. I bring greetings from Earth. Now, I should mention that we'd all been briefed about humans. Deathworlder species, the report said, evolved on a high-gravity planet with extreme climate variations and devastating predators, but reports are one thing. Seeing a human up close? That's quite another. Most species would look small in that massive chamber. Not Alexandra. She seemed to fill it, and not just with her physical presence. There was something else in energy that made my threat receptors tingle. Looking back, I really should have paid attention to those instincts. Welcome, Representative Reeves. Grand Marshal Crix Thor rumbled from his position in the high seat. His tone dripped with condescension, 6 eyes blinking in that irritatingly asynchronous way of his. We trust you'll find these proceedings educational. The slight smile that crossed Alexandra's face should have been our first warning. Oh, she said, I'm sure we'll all learn something today. She had no idea how right she was. And neither did WE. The council meeting proceeded with its usual mix of tedious protocol and thinly veiled political maneuvering. Reports were given, treaties were discussed, and I fought the urge to slip into voluntary hibernation. But then came the topic that would change everything: Earth's petition to upgrade their status from provisional member to full council race. Grand Marshal Crix Thor shifted his massive frame in the high seat, his scales catching the light in that particular way that always made him look like an overdressed disco ball. The council has concerns, he announced, as if bestowing some great wisdom upon us mere mortals. Humanity's rapid technological advancement and military expansion raise questions about their readiness for full membership. I watched Alexandra Reeves carefully. She sat perfectly still, one leg crossed over the other, fingers lightly drumming on the armrest of her pod. The only sign of her irritation was a slight narrowing of her eyes. With all due respect, Grand Marshal, she said, emphasizing the title in a way that somehow made it sound like an insult. Earth has met every requirement for full membership. We've shared our medical advances, participated in peacekeeping missions, and even helped develop the new FTL communication network. That's when Crix Thor made his first real mistake. He laughed. Not just any laugh, it was that horrible, grating sound he makes when he thinks he's being clever. Ah, yes, your achievements. Tell me, Representative Reeves, how can we trust a species that still resolves some of its disputes through physical combat? The chamber erupted in murmurs. I noticed several representatives shifting uncomfortably in their pods. Everyone knew humans had a complex honor system, but bringing it up in council, that was practically asking for trouble. You mean dueling? Alexandra's voice cut through the noise like a plasma blade. At least we have rules and regulations. Better than spreading rumors and plotting behind closed doors, wouldn't you say? Crix Thor's scales flushed that particular shade of purple that meant someone had struck a nerve. You dare question our diplomatic traditions? Perhaps humans need a demonstration of true civilized combat. The chamber went dead silent. Even the floating holo displays seemed to dim. Are you challenging me? Grand Marshal Alexandra's smile was pure predator, and for the first time I saw something that made my survival instincts scream. This wasn't just a diplomat in an expensive suit. This was something dangerous. I nominate my champion, Brigade Commander Yaxthal Crix Thor declared, gesturing to a towering figure in the military section. Unless, of course, humans only talk about honor. Yaxthal stood, all 4 meters of him, battle-scarred exoskeleton gleaming. He was a legend among the Crix Thor's people, undefeated in ritual combat for 3 decades. I'd seen him snap a battle tank in half during training exercises. Alexandra stood slowly, smoothing her jacket with deliberate care. Well, a proper challenge. You know, back home we have a saying, be careful what you wish for. She paused, scanning the chamber. I accept. No champions. Just you and me, Commander Yaxthal. The collective gasp was almost comical. Even Yaxthal looked surprised, his mandibles clicking rapidly in confusion. Surely you just, Crix Thor sputtered. Yaxthal is 3 times your size. Is that concern I hear? Grand Marshal Alexandra's voice dripped with false sweetness. I thought size didn't matter in civilized combat unless you're withdrawing the challenge. I remember thinking either humans are completely insane or they know something we don't. Looking back, the answer was probably both. The challenge stands, Crix Thor declared, trying to salvage his dignity. Combat in 3 cycles, according to council traditions. Perfect. Alexandra gathered her materials, preparing to leave. At the door, she turned back. Oh, and Grand Marshal, make sure your champion brings us a game. I'd hate for this to be boring. As she left, I couldn't help but notice she was humming. Actually humming. Like she'd just scheduled a pleasant lunch date instead of a death match with one of the most feared warriors in the galaxy. Sometimes I think we deserved everything that happened next. The next 3 cycles were interesting, to say the least. Being the designated council observer for human affairs, a job I'm now convinced was punishment for something I did in a past life. I had the dubious pleasure of watching both competitors prepare for the duel. Commander Yaxthal approached his training exactly as you'd expect from a decorated military veteran. His workout regime was intense enough to make a battle droid weep. He spent hours practicing with various traditional weapons, his massive form moving with surprising grace as he demolished practice dummy after practice dummy. The betting pools heavily favored him, naturally. The odds started at 500 to 1 and only got more ridiculous from there. But Alexandra? That's where things got weird. I found her in the station's recreational area, of all places, calmly sipping something she called a protein shake while watching old human entertainment videos. Combat documentaries, she called them. Though I'm pretty sure most documentaries don't have titles like John Wick or The Raid. Shouldn't you be, I don't know, preparing? I asked, trying to sound diplomatic. She glanced up at me, those unnervingly intense eyes sparkling with amusement. What makes you think I'm not? That's when I noticed she had converted part of the rec area into what she called a basic workout space. Basic. There were weights that would challenge a cargo loader, strange elastic bands, and various padded striking targets. But what really caught my attention was the way she moved. You see, most species have a certain predictability to their movements. Yaxthal, for instance, relied on his species' natural advantages, strength, reach, and that virtually impenetrable exoskeleton. But Alexandra? She flowed like water one moment and struck like lightning the next. It was unsettling. Word spread quickly through the station. Soon there was a constant stream of casual observers finding excuses to pass by the rec area. I overheard 2 Arcturian physicists arguing about whether human bone density could actually withstand a direct hit from Yaxthal. A group of Proximan medical officers started a pool on how many bones Alexandra would break, her own or Yaxthal's. They weren't picky. The council members were getting nervous too. I caught Ambassador VC Troll, supposedly a neutral party, trying to access classified human combat footage. Just ensuring proper medical preparation, she claimed. Right. because medical officers typically need to know about something called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. 3 particularly brave or foolish junior diplomats even tried to warn Alexandra about Yaxthal's combat record. They showed her footage of him literally tearing through a reinforced barrier during his last duel. Fascinating, she said, not even looking up from her stretching routine. You know what's really interesting, though? The way he favors his left side after an overhead strike. Almost like that old injury from the Regelian campaign never quite healed properly. The diplomats left looking distinctly unsettled. I don't blame them. I had access to Yaxthal's full military record, and even I hadn't noticed that detail. The betting pools started to shift slightly after that, just slightly. A few of the more observant species began placing small, quiet bets on the human. The odds were still ridiculous, but now they were down to 300 to 1. Grand Marshal Crix Thor, meanwhile, was strutting around like he'd already won the upcoming council elections. He even had the audacity to send Alexandra a ceremonial burial shroud, a not-so-subtle suggestion about the duel's expected outcome. The next day, Alexandra sent him a gift in return, a small earthen pot containing what she called a bonsai tree. It's a traditional symbol of patience and careful cultivation, she explained when I asked about it. Also, if you look really closely at the pot's decorative pattern, you'll find it spells out pride comes before a fall in ancient Earth script. He won't be able to read it, I pointed out. No, she agreed, that predatory smile back on her face. But I will. By the final day before the duel, the station was humming with tension. Yaxthal's supporters were loud and confident, but there was an undercurrent of something else. Those who had been watching Alexandra closely walked with careful steps and spoke in hushed tones. They had seen something in her preparation that disturbed them, though none could quite put it into words. I think I figured it out, though. You see, Yaxthal trained like someone preparing for combat. Alexandra? She moved like someone who had never stopped being ready for it. The night before the duel, I found her in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. Any last-minute concerns, I asked, trying to sound casual. Just one, she replied, turning to face me. I hope the council's medical team is as good as they claim. Yaxthal's going to need them. Looking into her eyes at that moment, I finally understood why humans categorize their anger differently than we do. There's anger, there's rage, and then there's that terrifying human capacity for cold, calculated fury. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. The station's combat arena was a marvel of engineering, or so the architects kept reminding everyone. A massive dodecagonal chamber with adaptive gravity controls and force field barriers to protect the spectators. The floor could transform from solid metal to energy-absorbing gel in microseconds. Today, it was set to standard humanoid combat mode, whatever that meant. By the time I arrived, the viewing galleries were packed tighter than a Martian sardine tin. Representatives from every council race jostled for position, their conversations creating a buzz that reminded me of an angry hive of space wasps. The medical team stood ready with enough equipment to rebuild half a battalion. Clearly, someone had read the human medical reports. Taking any last-minute bets, a Syrian banker asked me, her phosphorescent tentacles twitching with excitement. The odds on the human surviving the first minute just dropped to 200 to 1. I politely declined. I'd seen enough in the past 3 days to know better. The weapons table drew my attention. Council dueling traditions required each combatant to select from the same array of ceremonial weapons. The collection was impressive: plasma blades, gravity hammers, neural disruptors, and more exotic tools of destruction than you could shake a quantum stick at. Commander Yaxthal arrived first, his entrance accompanied by the traditional war drums of his people. He looked magnificent, I'll give him that. His exoskeleton had been polished to a mirror shine, decorated with the symbols of his many victories. He approached the weapons table with confident steps. The neural disruptor, he declared, selecting a nasty piece of work that could overload any known species' nervous system. A civilized weapon for a civilized duel. The crowd murmured appreciatively. Neural disruptors were considered the height of sophisticated combat technology. Clean, efficient, and theoretically painless. Theoretically. Then Alexandra walked in. No war drums. No ceremonial entrance. Just the steady click of her boots on the metal floor. She'd traded her power suit for what she called workout clothes, black fitted pants, and a sleeveless top that revealed arms corded with muscle. Her cornrows were tied back tight, and she wore fingerless gloves that had definitely seen better days. The crowd fell silent as she approached the weapons table. She took her time, examining each option with methodical care. Then, to everyone's surprise, she started laughing. "Is something amusing?" Representative Grand Marshal Crix Thor called from his elevated observation pod. "Oh, just appreciating the irony," she replied, still chuckling. "All these fancy weapons, and not a single one of you thought to include something basic." She turned to face the marshal, and even from my position, I could see that dangerous glint in her eyes. "I choose no weapon." The chamber erupted in chaos. No weapon? Was she insane? Even the betting computers crashed trying to recalculate the odds. "This is irregular," the chief arbitrator declared, his crystalline form flickering with concern. "The traditions require each combatant to be equally armed." "Oh, I agree completely," Alexandra said, her voice carrying easily over the commotion. "Commander, please put down the neural disruptor. Unless you're afraid to face a human hand-to-hand." Yaxthal's mandibles clacked in what I recognized as barely contained rage. The neural disruptor hit the table with enough force to crack its casing. As the force field barriers hummed to life around the combat zone, I noticed something odd. Alexandra was bouncing lightly on her toes, rolling her shoulders, looking for all the world like someone about to enjoy a pleasant workout. Yaxthal, despite his fearsome appearance and superior size, had taken an unconsciously defensive stance. "Begin on the third tone," the arbitrator announced. "May honor and wisdom guide your combat." I remember thinking only one of those would matter today, and I was pretty sure it wouldn't be wisdom. The first tone rang out, crystal clear through the arena. Alexandra stayed loose, bouncing. Second tone. Yaxthal's exoskeleton plates shifted into combat configuration. Third tone. What happened next still gives me nightmares. Yaxthal charged forward, exactly as everyone expected. 4 meters of armored killing machine, moving with shocking speed for his size. His primary arms extended for a grapple while his secondary arms positioned for striking blows. A classic opener that had ended dozens of duels. Alexandra didn't move. Well, barely moved, just a slight shift of weight, a subtle angle change. Yaxthal's grapple missed by millimeters. His momentum carried him forward, and then... wham! The sound of her first strike echoed through the chamber. A precise hit to what on a human would be the solar plexus. Yaxthal stumbled, actually stumbled. The crowd gasped. "Ha," Alexandra said, resuming her bounce. "So the plates do shift when you're off balance." "Interesting." Yaxthal recovered quickly, mandibles clicking in fury. He launched into a combination of strikes that would have pulverized a battle tank. Fast, powerful, precise, and completely useless. Alexandra moved like water through rocks, each dodge so efficient it barely looked like movement at all. "You know what your problem is, Commander?" she asked, ducking under a swing that could have decapitated her. "You fight like someone who's never lost another shift, another dodge, never really been hurt." A deflection that somehow used Yaxthal's own momentum against him. Never had to learn from failure. The crowd was dead silent now. We were all watching something that shouldn't be possible. A human, barely reaching Yaxthal's chest, was making one of the most decorated warriors in the galaxy look like a clumsy cadet. Then she stopped dodging. Yaxthal's next strike connected, or seemed to. At the last instant, Alexandra moved with the blow, rolling her shoulder to disperse the force. She grabbed his arm, stepped in close, and well, I'm still not sure exactly what happened next. There was a shift, a twist, and suddenly 4 meters of armored warrior was airborne. The impact when he hit the ground made the entire arena shake. "First lesson," Alexandra announced, stepping back to let him rise. "Size is just geometry, and gravity works for everyone." Yaxthal surged up with a roar, all pretense of civilized combat forgotten. His strikes became faster, more furious, some even connected. Alexandra's lip was split, a bruise forming on her cheek. But she was smiling, actually smiling. "Second lesson," she continued, her voice terrifyingly calm despite the violence. "Anger makes you predictable." That's when the real fight began. I'd seen combat before. I'd studied human martial arts after first contact, but nothing prepared me for this. Alexandra moved like someone who had rewritten the laws of physics. every strike flowed into a block that became a counterattack. She used Yaxthal's superior reach against him, staying too close for his full power, targeting joints and gaps in his armor. Getting tired, Commander, she taunted, landing 3 rapid strikes to his left side right where that old injury was. Feeling that Rigelian campaign wound yet, Yaxthal bellowed in rage and pain. His next attack was desperate, all 4 arms swinging in a devastating pattern. Alexandra ducked the first 3 strikes, but the 4th caught her square in the ribs. The sound of impact made even the medical team wince. She staggered back, and for a moment, everyone thought it was over. Yaxthal pressed his advantage, moving in for the finishing blow. That's when we learned what human rage really looks like. Alexandra's eyes changed. The playful glint vanished, replaced by something ancient and terrifying. Her next breath came out as steam in the climate-controlled arena. Final lesson, she growled, and her voice had dropped an octave. Humans don't just fight with our bodies. What followed was I lack the words to properly describe it. Alexandra moved like a force of nature. Each strike was precisely calculated yet powered by raw fury. She drove Yaxthal back step by step, targeting every weakness she'd identified earlier. The old injury, the slight lag in his lower left arm, the way his balance shifted when he pivoted right. We fight with generations of combat knowledge a strike to the knee joint. We fight with the memory of every loss a combination that cracked his shoulder plate. We fight with the rage of our entire species an uppercut that literally dented his armored chin. The final sequence was almost too fast to follow. Alexandra slipped inside Yaxthal's guard, grabbed his primary right arm, and executed a throw that combined leverage, momentum, and what I'm pretty sure was pure spite. The commander's massive form described a perfect arc through the air before crashing down with bone-rattling force. This time he didn't get up. Alexandra stood over him, chest heaving, blood dripping from her split lip. "Do you yield?" Yaxthal's response was a weak click of his mandibles. The universal translator rendered it as "I yield." The arena erupted in chaos. The medical team rushed forward. The betting computers exploded again. And through it all, Alexandra just walked calmly to the edge of the combat zone, grabbed a towel, and started wiping the blood from her face. Representative Reeves' Grand Marshal Crick's Thor's voice cut through the commotion. He sounded like someone had force-fed him a sour gravity generator. "The Council acknowledges your victory." "Thanks," she replied cheerfully, as if she hadn't just rewritten everyone's understanding of human combat capabilities. "Oh, and about that full membership status." The Marshal's scales had turned an interesting shade of gray. "I believe the Council will be revising its position." "Wonderful," Alexandra beamed at him. "I look forward to attending the next session. As a full member, of course." As she walked past my observation post, I couldn't help but ask, "How did you know you could win?" She paused, that dangerous glint back in her eyes. "Because, Captain Vex, humans don't enter fights we haven't already won up here," she tapped her temple. "The physical part, that's just making it official." The medical team was still working on Yaxthal. From what I could hear, he had 3 cracked plates, a dislocated shoulder, and what they termed comprehensive soft tissue trauma. Alexandra glanced back at the scene. "He'll be fine. Might want to recommend a good physical therapist, though. That Rigelian injury's been compensating wrong for years." As she left the arena, I realized something that would later become the first lesson in my human psychology and combat avoidance 101 class. It's not the human capacity for rage that should frighten you. It's their ability to combine that rage with precise, calculated strategy. That, and their terrifying habit of treating near-death combat situations like an educational opportunity. The council chambers were unusually quiet the next day. Amazing how watching a human dismantle one of the galaxy's most feared warriors can affect the general atmosphere. The floating holo displays seemed dimmer, as if they too were trying not to attract attention. Alexandra sat in her pod, now upgraded to reflect Earth's new full member status. The bruise on her cheek had darkened impressively, and she held herself carefully. Those ribs definitely weren't fully healed. But her smile? That was downright radioactive. Grand Marshal Crick's Thor looked like he'd swallowed a malfunctioning quantum harmonizer. His scales had settled into an interesting shade of greenish-gray that our medical staff assured me wasn't immediately life-threatening. The council recognizes he ground out, each word clearly causing him physical pain, that our previous assessment of human combat capabilities may have been incomplete. Oh, Alexandra's innocent tone could have sugared a black hole. Do tell. The emergency session that followed was fascinating. I watched 17 different species try to diplomatically say please don't hurt us without actually saying it. The Arcturian physicists submitted a formal request to study human muscle density. The Proximan medical officers had to revise their entire xenobiology database. But the real entertainment came when they started modifying treaties. Perhaps suggested Ambassador VC Troll, still trying to pretend she hadn't lost her entire year's salary in the betting pool, we should adjust the mutual defense protocols. Excellent idea, Alexandra agreed. While we're at it, let's discuss those trade route restrictions. You know, the ones supposedly based on our limited combat effectiveness in deep space conditions. I swear I saw VC Troll's crystalline form develop a hairline crack from pure stress. The revisions came fast after that. Trade routes? Opened. Technology sharing restrictions? Lifted. Military cooperation protocols? Extensively updated, though I noticed the updates focused more on joint training than actual combat support. Apparently, nobody wanted to risk having their troops embarrass themselves in front of the humans. Commander Yaxthal, watching from his medical pod, actually laughed when they proposed requiring all future duels to use weapons. The sound made 3 junior diplomats dive under their consoles. With respect, he clicked, his mandibles still slightly misaligned from yesterday's educational opportunity I believe that would be doing our human friends a disservice. Alexandra shot him a respectful nod. There's nothing like getting thoroughly beaten up by someone to establish a weird sort of friendship. The real changes, though, were in how everyone looked at humans after that. Gone were the dismissive glances, the condescending tones. Now, when a human walked into a room, people paid attention. Very careful attention. The kind of attention prey animals give to apex predators. You've created quite a stir, I told Alexandra as she prepared to board her ship back to Earth. The combat training academies are completely revising their curricula. Good, she replied, checking her travel documents. Though you might want to add a psychology course. The fighting part isn't really the important lesson here. Oh. She turned to face me, and for a moment I saw again that calculating look behind her eyes. The important lesson is that humans never show all their cards unless they have to. Remember that, Captain Vex. I did remember. In fact, I built an entire teaching career around that concept. As her ship departed, I couldn't help but think about how differently things might have gone if we'd actually paid attention to those early human combat footage videos. If we'd noticed how they turned every defeat into a lesson, every loss into fuel for improvement. If we'd understood that a species that evolved on a death world doesn't survive by being merely strong. They survive by being smart enough to look weak until being strong serves them best. These days, when new species join the council, they all have to take my class. And every term I start with the same question: who wants to see the footage of why we changed the rules? The smart ones learn from it. The others? Well, the medical team is always on standby. 10 cycles later, and the galaxy's a very different place. Funny how one little duel can rewrite the political landscape faster than a quantum computer calculating PI. Earth now holds 3 seats on the High Council. 3. The same humans we once thought were too primitive for full membership are now heading committees on defense, cultural integration, and my personal favorite, diplomatic conflict resolution. The irony is not lost on anyone. Grand Marshal Krix Thor retired shortly after the duel. Officially, he wanted to pursue personal interests. Unofficially, he couldn't handle how everyone snickered whenever he tried to call anything uncivilized in council meetings. Commander Yaxthal, surprisingly, became Earth's biggest advocate. He now runs the most prestigious combat training facility in the galaxy right on Earth. The waiting list is longer than a Venusian summer. Last I heard, he's particularly fond of something called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Alexandra? She's Ambassador Reeves now, though some still call her the storm behind her back. She keeps that old, cracked neural disruptor mounted on her office wall. Next to it is a sign in Earth standard that reads Plan B, not that we needed it. The diplomatic landscape has shifted too. It's amazing how polite everyone becomes when they realize the smiling human across the negotiating table could probably dismantle their entire security team with nothing but bad intentions and good timing. These days, when new species join the Council, they all get the same welcome package: a copy of the Council Charter, a standard trade agreement template, and a mandatory viewing of what we now call the education session. That's right, Alexandra's Duel has become required viewing for all diplomatic personnel. The betting pools have changed too. Nobody bets against humans anymore. Now they just bet on how long it'll take them to win. The current record holder is Ambassador Reeves herself: 3 moves, 2 seconds, and one very apologetic Regelian who learned the hard way not to question Earth's artistic achievements. As for me, I've got tenure at the Academy now. My class, Human Psychology and Combat Avoidance 101, is the most popular course in the diplomatic training program, though I'm thinking of changing the name to How Not to Get Your Exoskeleton Handed to You by a Smiling Ape. The final exam is simple: explain why challenging a human to a duel is about as smart as using a black hole for a back scratcher. So far, everyone's passed. Amazing what a little practical demonstration can do for the learning process. And that bonsai tree Alexandra gave to Crick's Thor. It's still alive, sitting in the council chamber as a reminder. Most species think it's just a nice decoration, but every now and then I catch a human diplomat grinning at it, and I remember. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in the galaxy isn't the one showing all its teeth. It's the one teaching you why you shouldn't show yours.